But outside of that, the emotional trauma was in the thousands. Well, this one's in the millions. These people are personally, emotionally, and physically displaced. And, I want to just take the moment, applaud the folks that are helping, the celebrities, the individuals, all those people who are taking of their time and probably more importantly of their money to give, to help, to reach out to you guys to say, give and help any way that you can. A dollar makes a difference, guys. That's the power of multiples. $1 from a million people all of a sudden becomes $1,000,000. So don't think that that dollar, that 50 cents doesn't matter to the people in Houston. It really does. My oldest sister is a Clear Lake or League City residents. They were blessed. They didn't get any flooding, but they got a lot of wind and a lot of rain damage. So even if you weren't in the flood zone, there were so many people that were in the rain and roof, the wind. That hurricane did devastations in many ways that the news isn't really reporting to you. They just showing you the floods because that's the most traumatic part of it. But there's so much going on in the city of Houston. Do your best. Do anything possible that you can do to make a donation to help a person in need. I think I was reading something that just really talked about helping others and talked about how, when you really read the Bible, that's the number one thing that Christ asked us all to be is Christ-like. And that's basically to be able to extend a hand and help those that are truly unfortunate right now. And I got to throw my hat and tip a hat, I guess we can say, to J.J. Watt. Here's a kid who has done so much for the city of Houston to reach out and do what he did. And then he didn't have any anticipations that it was going to grow to the magnitude that it grew. But you got to really give, hands up to J.J. Watt. Going to finally raise the $20 million by the end of this day. And he started out just to try and raise $3 million. James Harden. These are guys who are major, major millionaires in the city of Houston. And so many people always talk about athletes not having a voice. It's just funny because, I'll be talking about, some of the protests, what's happening in Cleveland, things of that nature. It's amazing to me that when it's time for an athlete to step forward, whatever way, positive, negative, we only want to talk about it when that guy makes a donation. There's so many athletes in this world, I'm a former athlete, who do so much for communities you probably would never know because we never shine the light on the positives that they do, but we always seem to find a way to shine a light on the negatives that they do. Busted for this, arrested for that, driving drunk, whatever that is. We're so quick for media to jump out and tell you about, oh, guess who screwed up? But when it comes time to really give these guys 10 hands of claps, open arm thank yous, we're kind of slow. Thankful for the media this past week. They talked about what James Harden's doing. They talked about what J.J. Watt's doing. They tried to give Michael Strahan a hard time because he was on vacation. But guess what? Michael's from Houston. He's going to do everything possible that he can do because that's where his family is. So it's great when you see athletes take advantage of this platform and can do it and use it for a positive. No different than, unfortunately, I'm going to say Colin Kaepernick taking his platform and using it for the positive messages that he's been trying to get out to the world as well. But guys, it's just take the time, be giving, do whatever you can to bless the people in Houston because right now they could use a hand. They could use anything. This is another Katrina for the United States, and we as a country will show our resolve. We'll show our tenacity. We were just talking before I came on the air. We're going to see the best part of being an American. Just came back from Mexico, and we were joking and talking about this before I came on the air that United States might be one of the only countries you will ever travel in where we segregate ourselves. I'm considered an African American, or this person is a Mexican American, or a Native American, or Caucasian. Nowhere in the world do you hear that or see that on applications, only here in the United States. And I think we've got to get to a country point where our country, we know we're Americans. We don't put a color to it, a hair texture to it, blue eyes or blonde. None of that really matters. And hopefully we can get by that. And I think you're seeing the best that of America can show by what you're going to see in Houston and what you saw in Katrina and all over the United States. When tragedy sets on our country, you see the true American spirit come to light. And I think you're going to see it in so many ways. The Houston Astros had to postpone a couple games, and you saw their manager make a heartfelt thank you and welcome back statement. The Houston Oilers. Oh, did I just say that magic word from the past? The Houston Texans. A bunch of young people are sitting there listening, saying to themselves, who the hell are the Houston Oilers? That's what they used to be called. And that's their heyday with Earl Campbell and all the great players from the past. But football season is back. We're wrapping up baseball season. We're going to talk about a little bit of everything. But, before I blow by Houston, one last shout out to the people. Be safe. Let's hope the sun comes and rises like it does every day and melt and, basically dry that land out so you can go back to living your life. So hands up and prayers for the people in Houston. And now we got to talk a little sports. Of course, you're listening to the Legends Community Show here on the Power of Voices. I'm your host, Greg Bell, former Ram, former Raider, but point blank, a diehard football lover. And I'm telling you what, guys, if you didn't enjoy last weekend, you're going to love this weekend. First weekend of the college football season got off to a kick. Question for all of you. Is Bama truly rolling? Or did we just happen to see an inefficient team that they were playing at the time? Florida State, so much, the preseason hype goes so much, you never know what you're going to see. Florida State now will be playing without their number one quarterback, going to go with a freshman. Alabama looked like they just dominated the game from the first quarter through the fourth quarter. Is Alabama that good? That's what everybody's going to have. Who has their number? Of course, you got Ohio State, who came out and started the season Thursday. Did not look very good playing against Indiana. And then we're talking about the powerhouse that has always been the Buckeyes versus the Hoosiers that have always been in the cellar. And you go and you watch Ohio State play, and you have to say to yourself, do you have any concerns? Do you have any concerns? I know people have major concerns in Austin, Texas right now. Texas, everybody thought the firing of Charlie Strong, the hiring of Tom Herman was going to be the answers to their question. Get the season started off right. Texas looked horrible. Not only did Texas look horrible, they played horrible. And you can say what you want to say. Herman is supposed to be this guru, offensive-minded guy. Their offense didn't tweak. Their defense looked worse than I think I've ever seen a defense look for a Texas team. Texas is a powerhouse. Right now, they look like they're going to fall around the cellar again this year. And you have to question, did you fire Charlie Strong 1 year too soon before he had the mixture just right? You gotta give a guy 4 years. When you fire a guy into his third year of a 5-year contract, sometimes you get what you ask for. And Texas might have asked for a little bit more than what they wanted. I know the Board of Regents decided they had enough, but do you have to put in money decision people to tell the coach or tell the AD when it's enough time? Because if you haven't heard, the Board of Regents, one of the Board of Regents for Texas A&M decided to speak up this past weekend about Mr. Sumner. And Sumner's, Texas A&M plays a fantastic first half game. UCLA looked terrible. Jim Moore looked like he was truly going on the hot seat. And all of a sudden, they start making some tweaks in the offense. They start making some tweaks in the defense. And the next thing you know, the largest comeback in FBS history. And I'm going to tell you, Golden Rosen. Is that what his nickname is going to be? Because he was golden. This kid came out the second half, threw for a little over 297 yards, 2 touchdowns, totaling 59 passes. He completed 35, no interceptions, 491 yards, 4 touchdowns, 34-point comeback in 2 quarters to upset Texas A&M the second half. And then, of course, all hell breaks loose in Texas. And the Board of Regents decides to speak up. I want to say it's Billy something. I don't even want to tell you his name, because here's where I go when you start putting money into college football. They're already making billions off of these kids, and the kids aren't getting anything. And the university continues to grow. They continue to raise the cost of college education. And now we got to put the money people into the sports business. And now, if I'm the president of Texas A&M, and I'm telling you, I know if I was the athletic director, I'm asking the other Board of Regents to basically speak to their board member. Because now you've basically put everything on notice. He's putting pressure on Kevin Sumner. He's now putting pressure on the school president as well as the athletic director, that because I'm a money person and I'm on the Board of Regents and we help make the decisions, we are the ones that help pay for these salaries, I want this guy gone. And that's a hard thing to do in week 1. And I mean, when I heard it, it almost kind of drove me batty, because I remember the same thing happened to Tyrone Willingham at Notre Dame. And the Board of Regents got involved there. And I actually even had a chance to speak to a couple of the Board of Regents. Now, mind you, don't get me wrong. I think the firing was right for Tyrone Willingham. Sorry about that. I thought he had overstayed his welcome. He didn't really understand the magnitude of the job, and he brought a poor staff in when he came. But Kevin Sumner has done some good things at Texas A&M and been very competitive. And one game into the season, they have a defensive breakdown, and that's all it was. The offense continued to move the ball, because guess what? Guys, I don't care how you look at it. You score over 40 points and you still lose the game, that has nothing to do with the offense. That has 100% issue with the defense. And the same thing is in reversal. When you are giving up that many points and you now make the adjustment and stop it, don't go and just say that, oh, this is Jim Mora and this is Golden Rosen. You know, Rosen had a great game. Don't get me wrong. But Demetrius Martin, defensive coordinator, give this man some credit. His defense went out there and became a shutdown defense. Not only did they shut down the running game, he did something that most people thought they wouldn't do or were incapable of doing. It was basically putting 7 and 8 men in the box, basically saying, throw the ball on us. We dare you. And I got to take my hat off, because, you know, I got the Athletes for Life Summer Life Skill Camp. And one of my kids, Nate Metters, was one of the key starting cornerbacks for UCLA, and he's been in that role for the last 3 years. He shut down the Texas A&M wide receivers. The corners for UCLA did their job, so did the safeties and free safeties. But the bottom line is they made the adjustment at halftime. They did what was necessary, and unfortunately, it took them a half to understand this. But they did, you know, whatever was said in the halftime speech, it did its purpose. UCLA actually came out the second half and played like the best team in the country if you really watch the film. See, if you can throw the ball in the collegiate game, you can win. You can grind it out like Alabama does, you can win. But when you have a sputtering offense and a so-so defense, you find yourselves in that 5 to 15 range. You know, because let's be honest, when you get to the Bowl Series, it's a one-and-done game. Those top 4 teams, pretty much at that point in that season, they're doing both offense and defensive well. And so now it's just basically a roll of the dice. Who's going to play better on that given day? But when you're a 5 to 15 team, generally you've got some letdowns. You've got some injuries. You've got some problems either on the offense or on the defense. And once the line's not protecting, you see the quarterbacks dropping. Rosen didn't do much scrambling. So you saw offensive line power by the UCLA Bruins in the second half. And I'm just telling you guys, it was an amazing week to watch college football. I want to know what you think right now. We're going into the season. Of course, it's just week 1, but the prognosticators and the predictors and all Las Vegas, they're already saying, okay, who are the top 5 teams from week 1? and who's going to be there at the end. And, it's going to be a throw and a dice. But I tell you one team that should get a lot more consideration than they're getting, and that's last year's Big Ten champions, Penn State. Penn State's balling, guys. Penn State not only looked like they finished the season playing well, they started the season playing well, a lot better than the predicted number one team in the Big Ten, Ohio State. Michigan, here's the problem with Michigan. They played Florida, and Florida has suspended 10 of their starters. And now I'm going to have to make a decision that Michigan really looked that good against second and third teams. I don't know where Michigan fits into that pattern right now. It's going to take me a couple more games to see, but the one thing I can give props to, Harbaugh is a better coach than they had, and that team is playing better football under his leadership. That's without question. I just know right now I can't tell you what I saw out of Florida, because guess what, guys? I think Florida has a top 5 team. I think they could be one of those one-loss teams that makes the playoffs, but it's getting to the point right now where we're just like what I just did. I put a loss as a judging factor. And I don't think that a loss should judge you. It's basically how are they playing against their opponents. Because guess what? Alabama can play 5 top 5 teams, and they could lose to one of those 5 teams, and all of a sudden we're calling them a one-loss team. And the way it goes now, if you don't win all 12 or 13 games, if you got a 0 at the end, that's almost a given that you're going to get a top 4 spot. And we know everybody's not going to go undefeated. But what I'm trying to figure out is Michigan that good, or was Florida really just not the full Florida team we are expecting to see coming into this game? And we knew it was going to happen. It's not like we didn't know those kids had been suspended. So Michigan knew they weren't going to be playing the best Florida team. But I'm still questioning, how good is Michigan? I know Michigan State looks strong. Stanford looked good. Oklahoma State, all of them are playing well. Notre Dame, they beat up on Temple. Notre Dame's first test comes next week, but then even next week, I can't tell you how Notre Dame sits right now. Notre Dame entered the last week against Temple, and they beat Temple the way they're supposed to beat Temple, by 30 points. Now we got Georgia coming in, and, of course, what happens? Georgia loses their number 1 quarterback. Now Notre Dame will get a freshman. Hallelujah. We get a freshman, and we better tear him up. If he's not sacked 6 to 7 times a half, we're not putting enough pressure on him. We got to make him think in 1 to 2 seconds what he's going to do with the ball. And if he holds it to 3 and 4, he should be on his back with the ball. So, like I said, I can't tell you if this is going to be the Georgia team that dominated last week. They ran the ball very efficient. That's going to be the number 1 question for Notre Dame's defensive front line. Can you stop the Georgia rushing attack? Because guess what? They're going to run the ball probably 75% of the time now. So guess what? Stack the box. Prepare yourself for it. Know that you're going to have to put 7 and 8 men in the box, and let's see what your corners can do. But it's one of those situations right now where the season has started. All the preseason pep talk that's been going around. I heard at one point they were saying Georgia's going to beat Notre Dame by 3 touchdowns. Now, I think that was overblown, but I wonder what they're saying now. But who cares? It all boils down to where the voters start to decide what they're going to vote on. And hopefully these voters are voting on the quality of football they're seeing in their, on the screen. They can't be at all the games, so hopefully they're watching the film. They're seeing the quality of play just as important as they're looking at the win-loss. Because guess what? There are going to be a few teams that might even go undefeated and not make it in the top 4. That could have happened last year with Boise State, with I think it was Western Michigan. Somebody, a couple of the lower level or not, non-FBSs. But when you look at the play, you really got to look at how that team performed as a whole. And I don't think you'll find a better performance than you saw second half from UCLA Bruins. And I'll tell you what, they ran the ball strong in the first half, but then they went to the straight passing game, and Rosen delivered, the offensive line delivered. I was excited just to watch that comeback. I'm sitting there watching it, thinking to myself, man, Jim Moore's job's on the line here if he gets beat by 40 points. And the next thing I know, 30, 20, 10. And I said to myself, I don't believe this. UCLA's going to win this game. And they did. So hats off to Jim Mora. Like I said, Coach Martin, he was the mastermind behind that defense. So we got to give him some props as well. And, you know, it's that time of the season. Tell me who your top 10s are. Just, hey, forget top 10. Give me who the top 5 colleges you think are going to be in the polls coming up week 2. We know who's going to be in the number 1 spot, and they played like it. I don't know what it is about Nick Saban, but he gets some horses. And not only are these guys horses, they're ball players. They seem to be prepared for anything that comes with the start of a season. Now, he's going to work on the bowl championship series, but in terms of regular season games, I don't think I've ever seen a better team start a season than the Alabama Crimson Tide. There's one thing Nick does. He's a preparation freak, and these kids are prepared for whatever the odds are against them, and they just seem to play. It's just like all cylinders of that engine are running on time, and they just continue to roll Tide. This is Greg Bell. You're listening to the Legends Community Show here on the Power of Voices. Got to talk about the big cut. And you know, before we start talking about NFL football, give me your view. You know, when I played in the National Football League, we had 3 cuts. You know, they'd go from like 80 players, 90 players to 70. They go from 70 to about 75. From 90 to 75. Then they go down to about 65. And then they get our final 59, you know, because we have a 52-man roster, 53-man roster, and they keep about 6 or 7 guys on what they call the development squad. So to get from 90 to 60, it generally was like a 2-3 week process. And if you never heard of the process, basically they call it the double knock. And that's not a good sound at 7 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, you're on these college dorms, and you know, you get what I always call the gopher, the guy that, you know, they send the guy who can basically, I guess, defend himself, basically, because he's generally going to get some harsh words thrown at him, if not the book thrown at him, or might even get a fist thrown at him. But this new series, this new world we live in is called the one and done. And we thought it was just for basketball, but it's in the football too. And it's part of what we call the one and done cut. And last week was a major cut for all 32 teams. Now, who shocked you the most? I've got a guy on the top of my list that I'm going to tell you, it shocked me when I saw his name. You didn't see any of the guys like, you know, you're not going to see a guy like Cam Newton or, you know, you name him, you know, a guy like, who's a guy that sticks out for you? Richard Sherman. You're not going to see a guy like that being waived. Not at this point in time. Now, 14, 15 years in, those guys' names will pop up if they stay that long. But a lot of buzzing went on this past weekend because there was no intermediate cuts. And it took me by surprise because every week, you know, you play a preseason game and you expect to see 15 guys clear out. You play a preseason game, some more guys clear out. They didn't do that this year. They changed the rules to make it basically a one and done. And all of a sudden, you started seeing this big roster. You know, the day after the final preseason game, they had 2 days to make their final cuts. So they allowed guys to stay all summer. Okay, so they made, you know, I think it's like $3,500 for whatever they pay us for our preseason pay. But did you see one name that jumped off the screen to you? I mean, think of the Cowboys, think of the Redskins, think of anybody you want, even the Rams. But no name jumped off better to me, and you got to remember this now because it was just 2 years ago he was the savior for the Chicago Bears. Great college running back, came out of Michigan State, Jeremy Langford. This guy 2 years ago, when he was drafted in the 5th round, was the surprise pick of the year. Probably had one of the best rookie years of anybody offensively. He got pushed into they let Matt Forte got hurt, so he got pushed into duty immediately. And he darn near runs for 960, you know, he ran for 900 plus yards. A year later, he has an injury. And Long and behold, Jeremy Langford's out on the free agents. And I'm going to tell you, that was a name that caught me by total surprise. I think this guy is a good running back. Put it this way, he's so good, I'm sitting here today telling you, if I were Les Snead or Dimoff, wouldn't he be a good backup for Todd Gurley? Because I think he would be. And I'm not giving you my 2 cents. I'm giving you my whole dollar on this one. This is a kid. I saw his name came up on the waiver wire, and it shocked me. Now, here's the only thing I don't know: did his last year injury carry over? Has he got back into playing shape? Has he fully recovered from last year's injuries? No one will be able to tell you that but the Chicago Bears. But the one thing I can tell you is if he was waived and he still wasn't 100%, then he'll get his money anyway. Because you can't waive a guy on injury. You know, we waived Corey Harkey, and I think he was injured. But, you know, at this point in his career, they have the new rules here, man, in the NFL. When I played, if a guy was injured, you couldn't cut him. You had to put him on the unable to perform list. And, you know, once you got him back to 100%, then you could decide whether you cut the guy or not. That ain't happening anymore. They got new rules, new, regulations. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting there and looking at the waiver wire, and I'm going to just tell you, this guy I think can help the Los Angeles Rams, and I still think the Rams need a good, solid backup running back. You know, it's somebody who actually pushes Todd Gurley to be the best that he can be. You know, sometimes I think we get into that cushion zone, and a guy gets there and he knows he doesn't have a quality backup, so you're going to get whatever you get out of him. And every day I had guys pushing me. I mean, I had 2 first-round picks when I was in my second year with the Rams, Gaston Green and Cleveland Gary. Both of those kids backed me up, and the Rams used #1 draft picks to get them. So they were basically saying to me, your job ain't secure unless you produce. And that's the way it should be. You should always want something that drives you. And for me, I didn't like being second team. So to be the starter, I knew I had to work that much harder than the guy behind me and perform that much better. And that's what I continue to do. Now, mind you, I'm not using that as an excuse for Todd Gurley right now. You know, I think Todd's got to deal with the fact that he does not have a very powerful line. They might be a good line, but good isn't great in the National Football League. You got to have guys that can move muscle. And this line is probably one of the smaller lines I've seen in the National Football League. And I think we're going to see some of the effects of that. And hopefully we can see Todd make some individual efforts to break himself loose like he did his rookie year, because the line his rookie year was probably as good as the line that we have today. But he made some plays, and those were the plays that we didn't see from him last year that I think you will see from him this year. I think he came in with a better mindset. He's ready to play. The only problem with him being ready to play, and we're still dealing and waiting for Jared Goff to really become that surprise quarterback we thought, is what are we going to do defensively? And Ram fans, you got to be with me on this one. I don't know what Dimoff is doing, and I don't know what Snead is doing. But not to get a contract worked out with Aaron Donald at this point in the equation. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-NFL player for you. And he's got about 16 to 20 guys making more money than him at the same position. It's economics, guys. And don't get me wrong here. I don't want to hear that thing in the back of the ear saying, oh, he's under contract. Guys, they waive you and you're under contract and you get nothing. So I have to step back and say Aaron Donald and his agent is doing what's right for him to make sure he didn't leave anything on the table when his career is over. There's so many times a guy will play his contract out and all of a sudden he's still waiting for that team. And the team basically says, you know what, we can get rid of him. Or thanks for those great years, but you're a declining asset now. You go ask for your money when you're at your highest point. And Aaron right now couldn't be any higher than any player in the National Football League, and he deserves what he does. I think he's asking for the $100 million deal, so put him somewhere around the 6-year, $100 million or more. But it puts him right in line with what other top-flight defensive players are being paid. J.J. Watt is getting paid that money. Clowning is getting ready to get paid that money. They've been paying that money for years. And Aaron, unfortunately, just came in the league 3 years ago. But his 3-year production has put him in that elite status. And I just think you got to come to the table correct from both sides. They know what the salary cap is going to allow for them to pay Aaron Donald. And I think at some point in the time, they got to go and work that contract out and get it done. This isn't one of those chance guys. This is our soul, our captain. He's our heart on our defense. And so somehow, some way, in the next week, we got to get Aaron Donald under contract. Ram fans, I don't know if you like me, but I'm nervous as hell right now because I want to see this guy under contract. I want to see him doing what I know he's capable of doing. So let's get him under contract. Charger fans, how about you guys? Are you ready for the start of the season? And better yet, how the hell did the Chargers get their first game on Monday Night Football after last year's season? You're supposed to be a good team, not an average team on Monday night. Monday night is the elite night, and they're starting the season off. Oh, my God. They're starting the season off against the Broncos. Really? Not only is it Monday Night Football, but it's a rivalry game. You're going to have a lot of emotion, but are the Chargers ready for that? I mean, after watching them this preseason, I'm not excited about the Chargers. I think they're probably an 8-8 team, if not worse. The Rams, I've got more excitement for them because they've made some moves to improve their team. But outside of getting a wide receiver, I don't think the Chargers have done anything. Melvin Gordon, still a major question mark. I do like Mike Williams. Get me wrong, smack me on the head on this one, but I like this guy. Coming out of Clemson, he was the best wide receiver in the country and might be as good as the one that we have with the Rams, who was a teammate of his, Sammy Watkins. I'm still waiting for Sammy to break out as well for the Rams. But, yeah, man, football is getting exciting. It's that time of the year. But one of the things that's probably a negative is high-paid veterans. And here's the thing you got to talk, because I got to talk about this. I was at the training camp this summer. I think this team is the only team in the AFC that can battle the New England Patriots, and that being the Oakland Raiders right now. And, of course, if you haven't heard, they're asking their 18-year veteran to take a pay cut. And, you know, when you've kicked the ball like Janikowski has for the past 17 years, I think he's earned his due. You know, Reggie McKenzie's my boy. Love him, teammate. I don't know the situation at whole. Let's be honest. I'm on the outside looking in. But Janikowski's been delivering for them for all 17 years. I'm not talking about a little bit of delivering. I'm talking about a lot of delivering. He's still got the most accurate foot in the National Football League. He still has one of the strongest legs in the National Football League. And I know he's making $18 million. But he leads the league in scoring every year. Now, if you're putting that kind of points on the board, keeping the wins going for this team, don't make it a fact that he's a kicker making $18 million, because guess what? When the Chief decided to make him a #1 draft pick 17 years ago, Al Davis knew what he was picking. He's one of the few owners to have ever picked a punter and a kicker in the first round. You know, you can say what you want to say, but he picked him in that slot because he knew he was going to perform for this team, and he's done an admirable job performing now, not just 10 years, not just 13 years, 17 years. And he's done it with a little, let's be honest, after the first year in the ecstasy, after we got over that, he's been a model citizen. He's done everything for the city of Oakland, and he's been just a star on the field. When we can't score no points, can't move the ball closer than the 40, we still get 3 points. That's you can't replace that kind of production in the National Football League on a week in, week out basis. This guy generally scores about 9 points a game. And now we're talking about asking him for a holdout. Now, mind you, they kept him on the roster. They're trying to get this thing resolved, but can they afford to cut him? And now, mind you, don't get me wrong. When I was at training camp, I saw they had a very good number 2 kicker, young kid. Don't know his name off the top of my head, which that generally happens when you're a kicker. You know, when you're a number 2 or 3 kicker, don't nobody know who you are. But the kid was accurate, and he got a leg. And you had to know that when you come in as a kicker and Janikowski's ahead of you and he's $18 million deep in the pocket, your job probably is not going to be playing for them. It's really to get some film to show other teams how accurate you are. But this young man was very accurate all summer for the Raiders, kicked the ball extremely well. But let's be honest. Are you ready to give up on Janikowski? Because I'm not. I know what he's capable of doing. And guess what? If I have to wait 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks before making that, I'm going to have to see him miss some field goals. And that's something I doubt you're going to see at his accuracy. This guy's like a 78%, 80% over 17 years. So don't think he's all of a sudden just going to start kicking wide left. Like he ain't going to turn into Scott Norwood in 1 week. So, and if y'all don't know who Scott Norwood is, call the Buffalo Bills. They'll tell you that's the kicker from the Super Bowl days. So that's just to throw some fun into the game, man. But it's just been crazy, you know, to hear that they're going to ask an 18-year veteran like Janikowski to take let's restructure your contract. Now, mind you, I told you I'm on the outside looking in. There's the ways you can look at that as a positive or as a negative. They could always give him a $20 million check and say, here's a new signing bonus, and we're going to bring your salary down to $10 million a year, but he's going to still make the same money. That's what most ball clubs do. But the fact that it became public tells me that's not what the contract offer was going to be for. It just basically means they want him to give up some money. And I don't know why. Can't ask. You know, that's not my business. All I can say is Janikowski's been there for this team. He's delivered hands in every day, every Sunday, every Monday night, and he continues to be the top kicker in the National Football League. Talking about National Football Leagues, I don't know if you guys have noticed it. We talked about the one and done cut, the waiver wire that just came down last week. Here's the thing. And just so you know, you're listening to Greg Bell here on the Legends Community Show, powerofvoices.com. Over the last 5 to 6 years, something's been happening in the NFL. And I don't know if you guys have been noticing it, but from August to September, all of a sudden now the NFL has become a trade century. It almost looks like Wall Street. This past year, they had over 30 trades in the month of August. When did we ever start trading in the month of August? I think back in 1985, there may have been 2 trades. But let me just go back 4 or 5 years. In 2016, there were 12 trades. 2015, 21 trades. 2014, 10 trades. 13 and 13 in 2013 and 2012. 30 trades this year in the month of August. They might be eliminating the cuts, but there's just a lot of movement going on. And when did we start trading guys before we actually saw them play? You know, preseason is where you actually put guys on film, but now in the National Football League, they're starting to move guys around. They're trading in August, and that's never been a part of the game from when I remember it. And so I'm just curious, you know, you see this one and done scenario. You see these guys making moves throughout the summer, and it's amazing because some of the trades that they make, we didn't even get a chance to see the kid get on the field. And hopefully he gets a chance to play when he gets to his new home. But the long and the short of it is the NFL is evolving. They're changing. I don't know if it's for the better or for the worse. I do know one thing, and I say this for probably all players would probably say this, it's nice to know that there's only going to be one double knock. That's nice to know, guys, because I'm going to just tell you. I played a total of 10 years, and I had the double knock come to me my last year in Green Bay. And it came to me because if you know Green Bay, they don't stay in dorms like most guys. We stay in a hotel right across the street from the stadium. And the double knock comes, but it comes with an explanation. You know, you're a 10-year veteran. I led them in rushing the entire preseason. They had already given me a nice little bonus for, I knew when you get a bonus of that nature back in those days, you figured you were safe for 6 weeks. But I got the double knock, and it was hilarious because it came with an explanation. They sent the gopher over, and I've never liked the guy, but they send him over, and I say, where's my ticket? Oh, Coach wants you to hang out here for a couple of days, and we're going to let you clear waivers. And I'm like, I really didn't want to be in Green Bay. I'd already retired, but I came out of retirement to play. And it's hilarious when you got a guy screaming and he's, he's a little, he's scared that I'm going to say something or do something. And I just looked at him and said, okay, I'm cool with that. Tell Coach I'm cool. But after 2 days there, and no information, not being signed after you clear waivers, which is 24 hours, I kind of got the writing on the wall. But see, what most people tend to forget about the National Football League is they owe me a first-class ticket back to Los Angeles. They owe me my last check, and they owe me some severance. And they didn't give me any of that. And so I can remember walking in, seeing Holmgren. They were having a team meeting, and I had to, say a couple harsh words to him, like, you don't treat me like I'm some fourth-year guy in this National Football League. I done put in more work in this league than you have. So it's one of those kind of things, and I can remember all my boys that were sitting in there that were coaching who were close with me. They kind of chuckled because nobody thought that I would say that to Paul. I mean, to Holmgren. Mike Holmgren. Ooh, you cursed at Mike Holmgren. He got his ass up out of that. He got his butt out of that seat, and he delivered in an hour. I gave him 1 hour to give me my seat, my ticket, and he delivered. I got my butt back out here to Los Angeles. I forgot I can say some things that I normally can't say. Sorry about that little pause. But I remember those days, man. And these young guys today, they come in with too much fear factor, I think, sometimes. Fear can be good, but sometimes fear can drive you a little bit further than you really want to, and they kind of drove me to the length. But it's just funny, man. So much has happened that's different today than it was, of course, for me 20 years ago. But, of course, in 20 years, it's supposed to change. 20 years. Guys, you're listening to the Legends Community Show here on the Power of Voices. I'm your host, Greg Bell. I want to talk to you about predictions. We're getting ready to start 2 days, guys. I think this is Tuesday. Ooh, I shouldn't have said that because, somebody will get mad at me. But we got Thursday night game kicking off. Patriots are going to be kicking off this Thursday. The NFL season is here. I want to know what you think about Tom Brady. Is he an MVP? Can he play 2 or 3 more years? Who do you think is the MVP player? Give me your prediction now. I'm predicting somebody that you probably didn't think about, probably won't think about, and is not a quarterback. I think that day of just giving quarterbacks because we throw the ball every time. But I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to be very, very surprised. And this is an NFC sleeper for me. And I'm going to look to see New Orleans do some damage. I think the Cowboys and New Orleans might surprise some people. We haven't had a real good chance, and you're on the West Coast, to watch a lot of the Saints games, see what Adrian Peterson's going to do. But, guys, this is the hardest runner I think I've ever seen in the National Football League. And I say that for 3 reasons. 6'2", 225, runs a 4.2, and I watched him run a 9.98, I think it was, in high school. But to come back, his work ethics, this guy has tremendous – he's got that Walter Payton, Barry Sanders type work ethic and cutting ability. And I'm interested to see New Orleans with a true 1,000-yard threat. We've had Mark Ingram there. We've had this guy, that guy. They haven't really had a true 1,000-yard rusher. I think they're always surprised when they get a running back that gets 1,000. Well, this guy has averaged 1,000 his entire career. If he keeps at it and plays for 4 or 5 more years, he will be the all-time leading rusher. He got to 10,000 faster than anyone. has been over 2,000, twice in his career. He's a threat. And yeah, you can talk about him missing a year last year, being injured most of the year. I watched this guy come back in 7 months from a medial collateral and anterior cruciate, whatever they say that ligament is. He came back from a total knee reconstruction in 7 months. Guys, that's tremendous. And I don't know if you understand that. That knee today is actually 100%. And I say that because he ran for another 1,300 yards on a knee that was 80%. It generally takes you for a total knee, reconstruction and to sew everything up and mend it up. It generally takes guys 1.5 to 2 years before they're at 100%. And yeah, you see guys come back. They come back, but that knee still isn't quite ready. It always starts to swell a little bit. He came back in 7 months. But remember, that knee really probably wasn't 100% at that time. So I'm interested to see where the Saints go because of all the older quarterbacks. Man, I don't know what it is about Drew Brees. He reminds me so much of Brett Favre. He just doesn't have any fear. He doesn't question his decisions. Aaron Rodgers doesn't question decisions. Big Ben doesn't question decisions. And the same, of course, is going to go for Tom Brady. He knows his decisions. But when you start thinking about a person that can influence the game to a different level, they already have an air game, but they've never had just a solid ground game. I think New Orleans Saints could shock a lot of people this year who weren't expecting to see it. And I think Adrian Peterson might be the reason for it. He plans to play with basically a lot of fire. He's already said he plans to make all those teams, which are 31 teams, who didn't take a run at him during this offseason and look at his free agency deal, he plans to make them hurt. And the way he does that, man, is he runs for a couple 100 yards on you and pounds you. And, I mean, he runs, like I said, he runs like Peyton with a little bit of Barry Sanders. And I'm looking for great things out of Adrian Peterson. That's my surprise pick for the MVP this year. He's been there before, but I think we've discounted the running backs to a point that we're going to have about 5 or 6 running backs that go over 1,300 yards this year. I think the kid in Arizona, Johnson's going to do well. I want to see Todd Gurley put himself back up there. Let's just be honest. It could happen if and I say this to be honest, it could happen in Oakland if Beast has the mode. See, I don't know. I told people when I went up there this summer, you spend a year out of the game, not training, running, doing what you normally do, and then you come back. We didn't see a lot of him in training camp, but I'm hoping that Marshawn is the beast that he was always been, because he'll go for 1,300 yards because we got the best line in the NFL right now. And I know Lee will look at me and tell me it's the Dallas Cowboys, but Mr. Martin, I think, is hurt right now. You got a couple people banged up on that Dallas Cowboy line. So right now, the Raiders have the best line next to the Cowboys when they're full strength. And if you don't know, now you know. The NFL hasn't made a decision on Ezekiel Elliott either. What the hell is going on there? If you give him 6 games, when you appeal a sentence, it's just like a criminal case. You appeal it, you got your probation area. Unfortunately, you don't have to put up bail with the National Football League. You can go what they call about playing. It's everyday business for the Dallas Cowboys. So don't be surprised when Ezekiel takes the field this weekend. He should be out on that field because with any other appeal, they put everything on hold. So that means you just go back. He's already back practicing. If you haven't seen it, he's on the field practicing. When he got suspension, he was not supposed to be in the facility today. He's in the facility, and he's practicing. So here you got Ezekiel Elliott that might not miss a game this year because at this rate, it might end up in court, which oversees any appeal that's on. So literally, guys, he might get a court case next February, and we might decide it then. But guess what? He'll play this entire season. And guess what? Jerry World is sitting there saying, we need Ezekiel. And now, mind you, they got some quality backups in Dallas. But I just gave you 6 guys right there that all should go over 1,300 yards. And that's not all of them. There are some more studs out there. And I'm not going to tell you that Leonard Fournette's one of those studs, because I'm not sold on Leonard Fournette just yet. He has a great body. He can run. He's done everything exciting in college. But he got a foot injury right now. And I'm going to tell you, when you're running back, there's only one thing that will take you down faster: your feet. That's your balance. When the feet go, you go. You can play with knees and you can play with this, but I'm telling you, when that turf toe hits you, that hairline fracture in your foot hits you, your game is slowed. It's slowed down 200%. So I don't know what the extent of his injury is right now. I want to find that out, but I'm not sold on Leonard Fournette just yet. I do like the young kid, though, at Carolina. I think Cam Newton's going to get off to a hot start. What's the young kid's name in Carolina from Stanford? Why can't I think of his name? His dad played McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey. I do like him. Not 1,300 plus, though. He might break 1,000 because he's going to probably catch 900. So he's going to be a dual threat, kind of what Roger Craig did for so many years. And I'm just telling you, it's going to be an interesting season this year. I'm just excited that football is here. And if you're not caught up with all the ins and out, get caught up quick, man, because fantasy is going to start soon. We just got a lot of things to talk about football-wise. I do want to take time before I run out of here and talk about some of the other things. Got to continue to give Serena her big props. She's in the third round right now. And I'm going to tell you, I got a question for everybody. Should Sharapova be in or should she be out? Is the game better with Sharapova or without Sharapova? And I ask that question because it's kind of like Tiger. You know, Tiger got, his suspension, but his injuries hold him back. She got caught on doping charges that she said she did not do. I like Sharapova. I think she's good for the game. I would have loved it to see her make it past the fourth round and get into the finals to see, can she still have the same effect that she has? And she's had over now 20 years. She was a child prodigy. She's played with so much tenacity. And then you got Venus. I don't know if any of you guys had a chance to watch Venus this weekend. She looked like Venus of old, man. Navarro, who she was playing, they had a volley that was about 5 minutes long. I mean, it was a beautiful volley. So, you see Serena. I'm just so used to seeing the name Sharapova versus Serena or Sharapova versus Venus. I want to see the greats of the game continue on, and when it's time for them to stop, they stop. I don't like seeing them being forced out, and to make her sit the entire season like they did, I don't know if that affected her game completely or she'll be able to bring it back later. Now, before we go, I got to talk about two quick things. One is the protests. If you haven't heard, the Cleveland City Members Union, I can't say exactly what they're called. It's, you hear that it's the president of the union for the city employees of the police and the air patrol, something like that. He says he's not going to carry the American flag for the Browns as they have in the past. And I'm sitting there saying, Guy, what are you doing? You're complaining because the NFL hasn't stepped up. The Browns haven't stepped up to reprimand the Brown players who have been very observant and been very vocal in terms of their support of kneeling, and some of the Caucasian players have put their hands on some of their African American players. Here I segregated ourselves again. But he's going to protest his way. Now, why would you protest that way if you don't want to allow the players to protest their way? You're both doing the same thing. So go for it. I'm all for it. Do what you got to do, Steve Loomis. You can go at it any way you want to. So much is going to be continued to be talked about in terms of what happened a year ago with Colin Kaepernick. And hopefully these players continue to make it and other players join. I saw a special where Jim Brown said it takes all. It's not just about some. All that are for it need to support it. And those that aren't, that's your business. It's your right, in essence. And the last thing before I get out of here is UNLV. I got it. One last thing. UNLV's got a high school coach who's now the college coach. and he got upset, and it's the worst upset in FBS history. 45-point underdog. Howard University, HBC, comes up and beats UNLV Running Rebels. And I'll tell you what, I said this when he got hired. I wasn't sure that Tony Sanchez was the right man for the job. He was a great coach at Bishop Gorman. But now UNLV is taking an all-time low. This was a once proud team where Randall Cunningham and what's my guy from the Bengals, the Shuffle? Ickey Woods. Ickey Woods came out of UNLV. And now they get upset by a non-FBS and really a pretty above-average team. Howard hasn't had a win season in almost 15 years. My daughter graduated from there, so, of course, I've seen them play. And they go and upset UNLV, took a $600,000 check, came into their house, beat them, and they beat them with Cam Newton's baby brother, Kalen. Hats off to the HBCs. Hats off to Howard University. And if I'm the president at the University of Las Vegas, Nevada, I got to start a search. I didn't hear the Board of Regents start talking about a search here. This guy hasn't won 15 games in 3 years. But Kevin Sumner, he's got to deal with his Board of Regents. Guys, this is the Legends Community Show here on the Power of Voices. I'm your host each week, Greg Bell, signing out. I will talk to you next week.